Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Welcome to the 8th of May Emancipation celebration. And we're going to start off with Djembe Den from Sandfield, Mississippi, and the Columbus High School Choir. Let's give them a big welcoming round of applause. Good morning, everybody. Let's hear it again for Jimmy Den from Sandfield, Mississippi, and the Columbus High School Choir. There's a lot of significance in the three songs they just brought to you. The first was a traditional African folk song calling people to the village. The second was a welcoming song, and the kids were doing hand symbols saying, I'm no threat to you, you're no threat to me, welcome to our place. And the last was a song of freedom and emancipation. So let's give them one more round of applause because we're really happy to have them. My name is Chuck Yarbrough, and normally I'm just yelling really loudly without amplification, so you get to hear me super loud today, I suppose. Welcome to the 8th of May Emancipation Celebration. Before I kind of introduce the program and tell you a little bit about the history of it and the day itself, there are some thank yous in order. First of all, I'd like to thank the students. For 15 years, our students have committed themselves to a research project that turned into a public performance to share what they've learned with the community. So I'm going to ask you to give them a big round of applause for this. And of course, we couldn't do a program like this for the public, for the community, without the support of a whole lot of other people. Mayor Robert Smith and the City Council of Columbus and the staff, Greg Lewis, Casey Bush, have been instrumental in doing things like trimming the tree so we can stand here. Which, by the way, we perform in this location because at 6 o'clock in the evening on the 8th of May, which is normally our performance time, is completely in the shade. You can tell from the reflection off my scalp it is not right now. Okay? But anyway, we're really pleased for all the support the city gives us. In addition to that, this year we've gotten support from others against all odds in the Mississippi State University libraries. A project headed up by our own MSMS alum, D.D. Baldwin, who's down here in the front, provided important resource opportunities for our students to do research. In addition to that, Visit Columbus has been a long-time supporter of the program, helping us to put it on and get the word out. In addition to that, we're very thankful for Mona Vance Ali and the Columbus Lounge Public Library. Without the resources that are there, and the resources that she, by the way, and her staff really broke their backs to put online through the Mississippi Digital Library this year, this program could not happen. So all of those folks are part of the story of thanks that we should give as a community. In addition to that, I've got to have a cheat sheet because I'm just at that age, guys. I think I've hit them, actually. This is kind of unique. I'm not very good at that. So thank you to all of those folks. Now, the 8th of May in 1865 was the day that Union troops arrived in Columbus, Mississippi. We know that because a year later, there was a Freeman Bureau School teacher named Cyrus Green from Indiana who had come here to teach along with a whole host of other members. They were Quakers from Indiana, part of the Freedmen's Aid Society, and they came to teach and educate not just the children of Columbus who had been enslaved, but the adults as well. And by early 1866, the largest Freedmen's Bureau School in the state of Mississippi was the one here in Columbus, which at that time was the third largest city in the state of Mississippi. So we think of Columbus as small town, but in 1865, it was big city by Mississippi standards. And we owe our understanding of that period in part to this guy, Cyrus Green, and his grandchildren that sent a transcript of the diary to the Columbus Lounge Library way back in the 1990s. So what do we know from that? We know that he said on 8th of May, 1866, that today is a day long to be remembered. And then he recounted the celebration, food and music and speeches given by Robert Gleed and other leaders in the community, celebrating the arrival, the one-year anniversary of the arrival of Union troops here, which effectively brought emancipation. Of course, the Emancipation Proclamation had gone into effect on January 1st, but it didn't. Freedom doesn't reach a place until the federal presence arrived. And in a place like Columbus and Lowndes County, where the vast majority of the population was African American, in Mississippi, where the vast majority of the population was African American, freedom didn't just come because President Lincoln announced emancipation. It came because the federal government's troops arrived to enforce it. So that was a day of great celebration. Now, that was celebrated in the African American community here for well over a century. And for well over a century, members of the African American community said, we're celebrating the day Union troops arrived. Despite that, the message in local newspapers and among many people in the white community was, the black folks don't know what they're celebrating. They don't know why they're doing this on this date. Even that is kind of a message that untells a story of truth to fit the moment. And I like to say that, most people study history not to get it right. Most people study history to get it wrong. They study history to lift some group up and put some other group down. And I think we'll all benefit from a more complete understanding of our past, because that enables us and empowers us to make the best, most productive version of our future together. These students have done research, and they're here to share it with you. And the question I often get asked is, why in this cemetery? That really has to go back to 2006, when a young woman named Renita Holmes, who was one of our students at MSMS, wanted to do a Black History Month program. But like all teenagers, she came to me on February 26th, I think it was. Okay? Right? Black History Month is February, of course. So she came to me on February 26th, and she said, let's do a Black History Month program. I said, Renita, it's 48 hours until the end of Black History Month. But there's another date of some importance. A date that I had been introduced to by Susie Shelton, who is here in the audience with us today. A local historian who did a lot of work in the 1980s and 90s. Susie's over there in the shade. Thank you, Susie. And Renita and the Voices in Harmony Choir took research I had done in a fledgling stage back then and put together a program, and we did it underneath this tree, as I already said, because it was in the shade. And we had a total, I think, of 35 people attend in 2 sessions. The second one, I think, had 8, including a WCBI cameraman, which I was appreciative of. But we've grown ever since because students have committed themselves to telling the story. And this year, one of the kids who's an usher out here, who's in the African American History class, she said, I'm taking this class because I know there are untold stories in our community's past. And she said she felt like she wanted to find what those stories were and give them voice. And the reason I think this is an important thing for us to teach our young people to do is because we have to all celebrate our voices. And young people have to learn that from the beginning. They can shape our world in positive ways that somebody who's getting to be a little bit older and starting to lose his hair like me can't even imagine. So, with all of that said, we're here on the 155th anniversary of the day Union troops arrived, and we're going to celebrate emancipation. What you're going to see is students who have conducted primary document research online this year because we couldn't get in the actual archives, and they've written original scripts based upon that research. They're going to share those with you in dramatic performance. We're also going to have interspersed with that song, because song is something important that brings us together and has empowered people for generations, regardless of what their background is. And we're going to have at least one spoken word piece where a young man shares some of the challenges of being an African American young person in today's society. And then at the very end, we're going to ask all of you to stand up and sing. Now, not as a performance, by the way, because if you're like me, you go to church, at least occasionally, and you sing, even though the people next to you really probably aren't very appreciative of the fact that you're singing. That's certainly the case with me. But we'd like to ask all of you to rise and join us in singing Lift Every Voice and Sing, the words of which are in your program. So, without further ado, I'd like to welcome to the stage the Voices in Harmony Choir and performers with a big old round of applause. Mississippi Choir.
My name is John L. Franklin Jr., and I'm a student here at Union Academy right here in Columbus, Mississippi. And that man over there is my best hope for a future. You see, over there at Union Academy principal Professor William Master Mitchell. They say the best leaders lead by example, and Professor Mitchell certainly does that. William Master Mitchell was born in slavery in 1855 to Simon and Maria Mitchell. When he was 10, he was freed, along with a large number of blacks when he was arrived here on May 8, 1865. Slavery was dead and opportunity came for a newly freed people. One such example was a chance to learn how to read and write. The Freeman's Bureau established schools here in the months following the Civil War. Dr. Wilson from the American Missionary Association heads the school, and local blacks offered to encourage donations. It truly takes a village, you know. Speaking of the village, in 1866, local folks started to lynch the white teachers teaching both black children and adults. Luckily, men like Ben Fernandez, Robert Gleed, Henry Baker Sr., and Simon Mitchell stood armed guard outside the school. They not just protect the teachers, they tell our rights to education, our rights to opportunity, and our rights to freedom. Back to Professor Mitchell. He took advantage of opportunity. In 1872, he enrolled at Alcorn State College under leadership of Reverend Hiram R. Revels. Revels helped Mitchell realize the transformational impact education can have on people. With this realization in mind, Mitchell voted himself to become one of the best black educators in East Mississippi. Surely Freeman would not Mitchell to achieve his goal. But in 1875, local whites used violence to overthrow the constitutional government right here in Lowndes County. All hope seemed lost for African Americans. There's a saying that pressure makes diamonds, and Professor Mitchell certainly has those same sentiments. He's always said that when all things lost and there's nothing else to look for, get down and look up to God. Having the faith the size of a mustard seed will surely work wonders. But I'm not here to preach. Not here to preach. Mitchell's faith paid dividends. And he returned in 1877 and was named principal of Union Academy. Mitchell returned in 1877 with enrollment Union Academy sold to support black parents and teachers. Mitchell was a man of many talents. He was co-founder of African American Insurance Company and was president of Columbus African American Bank, the Penny Savings Bank, and was many other organizations. He was a deacon and Sunday school teacher at Missionary Union Baptist Church. Hallelujah. Professor William Master Mitchell led Union Academy for 40 years. Through Jim Crow disenfranchisement, he led. He flouted race opposition and fought a system of white supremacy. He asked his hope and dream of slave. I was to be his greatest son one day. Mitchell truly made way out of no way, and because W.I. Mitchell, I have faith. Because W.I. Mitchell, I stand. Because W.I. Mitchell, I can. W.I. Mitchell works hard, we can see, working hard to bring us opportunities. And the mark that he left, the mark that stands, is his legacy. Well, I better have back to class, y'all. We won't catch that bell.
I've been redeemed.
Way in the water.
Follow him on down the Jordan stream.
God's gonna trouble the water. Way in the water. Way in the water, children, way in the water. God's gonna trouble the water.
You know the chilly water was dark and cold.
Way in the water.
You know it chilled my body, but not my soul.
God's gonna trouble the water. Way in the water. Way in the water, children, way in the water. God's gonna trouble the water.
If you should get there before I do,
way in the water.
days that I'm coming to.
God's gonna trouble the water. Wade in the water. Wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. Wade in the water. Wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water.
Good morning, and welcome to Rab's Meat Market. I got plenty of lamb to go around, along with my oysters and my special Spanish mackerel. I got all the fresh meats that you might require for the perfect meal for your family and guests. I am Alan Rab, and 100 years ago, that might have been the way I greeted you when you came into my store. You see, I owned a meat market downtown, and later, on South Side. My first location was on 100 block, on Market Street. Today, you call it North 5th Street. That way. My father was named Jack Rab, and he was born in Georgia. He had been enslaved, but purchased his own freedom, along with the freedom of some of his siblings, before the Civil War. As a free man of color, in this slave society, his life was far from easy. In fact, life for a free man of color was really not very free, but he did make a way for himself, and that was an example I tried to follow. My father, Jack Rab, was a barber in downtown Columbus, working with another free man of color named Adam Hereford. When Hereford died in 1863, my father purchased the two-story brick building where their barbershop was located. Turns out, eventually that purchase got my family and me a one-way ticket to court. Let me tell you about my family. Oh man, Jack Rab believed in family. He married my mother Gilly and had 6 children. Anna, Maria, Mary, myself. I was the oldest son, Simon, and Peter, in that order. But back to my family and the course. After my father and mother died and were buried here in Sandfield Cemetery, a man by the name of Charles Hereford sued to take back our inheritance. Turns out, Charles Hereford was the son of the late Adam Hereford, the man who had owned the building that my father had purchased in 1863. Charles Hereford claimed that my father had fraudulently purchased the property, so he sued to get it back. The case made its way all the way to the Mississippi Supreme Court, which ruled in my family's favor. You see, Charles Hereford's mother had been enslaved when he was born, and neither he nor his mother were freed until emancipation arrived with those Union troops in 1865. That meant that when his father, a free man of color, died, neither he nor his mother could inherit anything. My father had legally purchased the property, and in 1896, the Mississippi Supreme Court threw out Hereford's appeal, solidifying my family's inheritance. Mr. Hereford, like so many other Southern blacks, eventually moved to Chicago during the Great Migration and lived his final days there as a barber, just as his father had been. The case worked out in my family's favor, but it also highlights how dire a black man's financial position was during me and my father's time. A black man's ability to protect his property was dependent upon a white man's willingness to let him do so. That wasn't fair, and it wasn't equality either. That makes my family's accomplishments that much more significant. I took what my father left us, and I left a positive mark on Columbus. I led by example in my community, and was active in community affairs. But that doesn't mean there weren't times when my business struggled. In 1904, I had to sell my meat market downtown. Some people said that the new owner was fine, and some said they could tell the difference of me not owning it anymore. And so, not long after it, I wanted to own my own show again. And in 1910, I opened a new market on the corner of 5th Avenue and 9th Street South, near the college, and my family and I live next door. Now, that's enough about me and mine. Now, you all just missed my Fresh Fish Friday, but be back next week. I'll have some fresh mackerel in.
White Black by Jalen Jones. I thought about what I have to prove today. My stomach turned caustic, sick of Oreo and coconut. I say it should be nothing, but strangers have decided that I am an imposter, built from white picket fence wood and trim viridian. No one seems to believe that I grew up in a small apartment and broke skin on saw-edged playground plastic. But I refuse to accept the way my words take shape and the shame it embeds in me. As if my voice and GPA color my skin, not the cotton that mama chopped in childhood summers, and the fear I feel stirring in my father's voice when he tells me I was born here. You're what people call white black, a friend tells me. But I say, I am the dirt road beside my home, tread-worn sand and grit, running past rot-haunted antebellum housing, shacks dragged into the mud by the heavy spirits of the South, so they may reunite with their corpses. I am the laughter of 3 generations packed into one home, spilling over each other on the couch and standing shoulder to shoulder, eyes shut in the kitchen to thank God for the way the cornbread rises and the pecans crumble.
Librarian of Congress, at your service. Now, mind you, I'm not from Columbus, but I have an important connection to your city, which I will share shortly. But first, I was born in 1871 in Windsor, Canada, and I attended schools in Oakland, Ohio, and Detroit, Michigan. Despite my education, I experienced racial discrimination, but at the same time sought to make the best of the opportunities I found or created for myself. Mine was no easy walk, but after years of teaching in Kentucky, I scored highly on a competitive civil service exam and became a clerk in the government service at Washington, D.C., and eventually I advanced to the Congressional Library. Now, I understand you folks would like information regarding Henry Edwin Baker Jr., a Columbus native who was the first black person appointed to United States Naval Academy. I feel uniquely qualified to fulfill your request. You see, Henry was my husband. Henry Edwin Baker Jr. was born on September 1st, 1857 in Columbus, Mississippi. He was the oldest child of Phoebe and Henry Baker Sr. My Henry's father was a carpenter, a director at Missionary Union Baptist Church, and a political leader who worked to improve the lives of people in your community. My Henry excelled in everything, and his peers looked to him as a leader. He was among the first students to attend Union Academy here when it was just being established as a Freeman Borough School. Then, in 1874, Henry's intelligence seemed to be opening unprecedented opportunities. He was appointed to United States Naval Academy by Representative Henry W. Berry from Mississippi, and he was sworn in as a cadet midshipman on September 25th, just 3 weeks after his 17th birthday. Now, Henry was only the 3rd black midshipman to enter the halls of the United States Naval Academy in our nation's history. Henry endured the physical and mental hardships that came with being a naval officer in training, but he also experienced racial discrimination, hazing, and violence from his classmates. During his time at school, not one person ever addressed him by his name. They would say, "Damn Negro" or "Monk." My husband was attacked with stones several times, had his books mutilated, clothes cut or destroyed entirely, and suffered other untold petty annoyances. A Marine had to be detailed for his protection. Now, when they weren't harassing Henry, they isolated him. Henry described that his classmates acted as if he had leprosy. Out of 400 people, not one person offered their hand in friendship or gave him words of sympathy. Can you imagine how hard that was for a 17-year-old boy? The only act of kindness that he received was from a Pennsylvania boy who gave him a slice of birthday cake at midnight because his mother requested a piece be given to the colored cadet who was without friends. Now, Henry didn't just take the abuse lying down. One student reported that Henry cursed at him, an act unworthy of an officer. The case went to trial. The judge determined that the classmate had been harassing Henry and prompted a confrontation. The classmate was expelled. While found not guilty, Henry was also dismissed by the Secretary of the Navy because the Academy superintendent had requested. Apparently, Henry's presence was considered disruptive. Sounds to me like they were blaming the victim. After his dismissal, Henry returned to Columbus briefly, but he soon went to Washington, D.C., where he graduated from Benton School of Technology and then from Howard University School of Law at the top of his class. He then went on to work at the United States Patent Office as a patent examiner. In 1902, he was promoted to second assistant at the Patent Office, and which was considered the highest-ranking African American there. In those days, there was an organized effort to prove blacks were intellectually inferior to whites. It was a way they attempted to justify the horrible acts of violence and segregation being enforced against our people. With his expertise, Henry went to work uncovering the names of African American inventors who built this land from the ground up without recognition. Henry uncovered over 1,200 names, but only 800 were willing to go public. They feared white retaliation. However, Henry was soon able to publish his findings in 2 books, The Negro as an Inventor and The Colored Inventor, a record of 50 years. Henry single-handedly produced one of the most important records of black excellence in our time. My Henry, he was a smart man, and he wasn't afraid to show it, no matter how much white folks threatened those of us who wanted to achieve. He stood up for what was right and provided a spotlight for his peers. He did for those what they could not do for themselves. And that right there is something to remember about my husband. Thank you.
It's coming around the bend. God said he was coming back, but he didn't say when. You better get your house in order. The train is coming long.
Nothing on this train to lose, everything to gain. Come along, my friends, come along, get aboard, let's ride this train. Nothing on this train to lose, everything to gain.
The gospel train is coming. is coming around the bend. God said he was coming back, but he didn't say when. You better get your house in order. The train is coming along.
Nothing on this train to lose, everything to gain. Come along, my friends, come along, get aboard, let's ride this train. Nothing on this train to lose, everything to gain. Come along, my friends, come along, get aboard, let's ride this train. Nothing on this train to lose, everything to gain.
Good day, everyone. Now, I'm sure you heard great stories of Frederick Douglass, Harriet Tubman, and Senator Gleaves, who have all made everlasting marks on black history. But my history documents the small victories accomplished in between those milestones. My name is Richard Dan Thrift Littlejohn, son of slaveholder Zach Littlejohn, husband of Georgia Young, and father of my 3 sons, Richard, George, and Thomas. I was born in North Carolina in 1855 and married my beautiful wife, Georgia Augusta Young, in 1882. That same year, we moved to Ohio, where I attended Oberlin College. You see, since 1835, Oberlin has allowed white men to study with black men like myself, making it the first college in the United States to racially integrate. This was an enormous step forward for African Americans wanting to pursue higher education, considering colleges in Mississippi didn't integrate until the 1960s. I was able to get an education long before higher education was commonly available to my black friends and family. I had felt that getting the education and returning to this South here will help me create numerous opportunities for the black community. Plus, I had hoped we create a more amicable relationship among whites, but I figured there was a long road before social equality could be reached. So, throughout my lifetime, I tried using my education and the privileges that came with it to confront the problems we've encountered since our time in America. Once I moved back to Columbus, Mississippi, I became a Grand Mason and served as the treasurer and secretary of the Mississippi's Colored Masonry Benefit Society. This was a fraternity of black men who strove to better their communities. The Masons were a group of free black men who organized as a driving force, fighting against white supremacy and inequality. Not only did we battle against injustice, but we also financially aided the widows and orphans of our brothers, who are now resting in peace. Around 1886, I joined the board of directors for the 10th district of the Grand United Order of Odd Fellows in America. The GUO is an international fraternity where discrimination of race was rejected. Unlike most white fraternal organizations of my day, but I ain't gonna say no names. Aside from my community commitments, I also started a business of my own. In 1887, I founded a newspaper here in Columbus called The New Light, which is said to be the first African American owned and operated newspaper here. I was the editor, proprietor, and publisher, so I basically did it all. Through The New Light, I worked to highlight the voices of African Americans because most white newspapers would present blacks in a negative way, which was far from the truth. My efforts paid off, and in the end, my paper was described as people as the organ of colored people. That's a nice ring if I do say so myself. Sadly, I passed away November the 3rd, 1903, but I gave my loved ones a sizable inheritance. I deeded property to my beloved wife, Georgia, and decreed the property be split among my 3 sons once the youngest one reaches the age of 21. Now, of course, my wife and my 3 sons will all receive my personal property, but I wouldn't dare leave my 2 sisters, Laura and Sarah, behind. I gave each of them $50. And now I rest here at Sandfield Cemetery. And as you can see on my left, I'm proud to say that here tombstone represents to be the largest one in this here cemetery. And though I may be at rest, my soul still lives through the hearts of my cohorts, which allows them to prosper as I have in the past. For a better community and a better Mississippi for my brothers and sisters. Thank you.
Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. A long ways from home. A long ways from home. Hello, good people of Columbus. My name is Anna Gleed, but you can call me Annie. I suspect you're here to hear about my father, Robert Gleed, the first and only black state senator from Lowndes County. My father's political progress in a place like Mississippi was and is important and necessary in every sense of the words. Men and their accomplishments. Ladies, you know how it is. No matter their color, it's always about men and their accomplishments. I mean, don't get me wrong, my father went through the ringer for being a black man in power. So did every other black man. It was brutal and constant and disgusting. But black women, brutality against black women was a different type of brutality. I digress. My father was born a slave in Virginia but escaped during the Civil War. He was caught, resold, and remained enslaved right here in Columbus, Mississippi until May 8, 1865, when Union troops came and freed him. When freedom came, my father got to work, and fast. He became a successful businessman, one of the very first African American men to do so. He went to work getting black voters to the polls. My father garnered the support of, he earned 295 acres of farmland, 3 city lots, a stately home, and a general store. My father was the president of the Mercantile Land and Banking Company, the head of the Chamber of Commerce, a 2-time Mississippi State Senator, and he was on track to become the sheriff of Columbus too. But angry white Democrats and Confederates wouldn't allow that to happen. My father garnered the support of thousands of black voters. There were twice as many of us black voters registered to vote as white voters. Of course, we were the majority of the population. He saw a clear path to victory on November 2nd. But the good and hospitable citizens of Columbus would never allow a black man to have the most powerful office in the county. On the eve of the election, a former Confederate, Jacob Hunter Sharp, led a mob attacking my father's supporters, killing 4 black men, and even gunning one down in front of my daddy's store at Gleed's Corner. Our house was ransacked, our furniture was destroyed, and the only reason we survived is because we hid in the well of a white man. That was the scariest moment of my life. It still haunts me to this day. My father even brought this up to Congress, but even after that, there would be no federal protection for black citizens under the law. My father sold our home, our land, and even his store was sold at a later date to a white man for less than its value. Go figure. He packed everything up and moved me and my family to Paris, Texas. I even had to quit my job working here at Union Academy, and there was no guarantee that I would find work anywhere else. It was hard for black men to find work, and it was even harder for black women to do the same. Luckily, I was given the opportunity to teach at the denominational school there, but I would still never come to own my own land. I had to live with my little brother Virgil, even though I was a grown woman making my own wages as a teacher. Anyways, even from exile, my father fought for the equality of our people. He toured Mississippi during the 1880s under the auspices of the Central Earnest Workers Association, fighting for the economic equality for black men and women. At the age of 80, my father took his last breath, and he's buried right here in Sandfield Cemetery, along with my mother, Susan, my little brother, and me. I died of pulmonary edema in 1938, a little more than 20 years later. My father, Robert Glee, was a man who worked for the economic equality, the justice, and the freedom of all of our people. I was a woman who taught others to do the same thing for themselves. Even through the shackles that held us down, we maintained hope for a better tomorrow. May you continue in that hope for your children's sake.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our Emancipation celebration. It is my distinct honor to call Reverend Jesse Freeman Bolden to the stage. Born to Andrew and Teresa Bolden on October 8, 1820, Reverend Bolden acquired his education in the city of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and in 1853 became pastor of Union Baptist Church in that city. He also served on the founding board of trustees at Alcorn State University and had a direct role in the organization of the General Baptist Association of Mississippi. After moving to Columbus in 1866, Reverend Bolden was a leader in the formation of Northeast Mississippi's Republican Party. He became a member of the first Republican State Convention in Vicksburg in July 1867, eventually being elected in 1869 to the Mississippi House of Representatives, where he was highly respected and pursued equality. Presenting the Congress the first petition from Mississippi requesting that African Americans be granted the right to vote. Now, without further delay, let us welcome Reverend Jesse Freeman Bolden.
For freedom that Christ has set us free. Stand firm then, and do not let yourselves again be burdened by a yoke of slavery. Galatians 5:1. Good people of this fine community, my name is Reverend Jesse Freeman Bolden, and I would like to remind you just why we are gathered here today. May 8th, 1866. This is a celebration of slavery's end, a celebration of the abolition of that most unholy of institutions, that which weighs heavy on our nation and heavier still on my brothers and sisters that have endured its brutality. This is a celebration of our emancipation.
Yes. All right.
Make no mistake, I was born in the state of Delaware a free man, and I will die a free man. My only master high up above. But my oldest brother Benjamin was a slave. His masters plotted to send him down south just before freedom was to be his upon his 18th birthday. And only by the grace of God did he and our whole family escape from Pennsylvania. I say this because many were not so lucky. Many have felt the bitter sting of rawhide whips against their backs, only to have red pepper rubbed into the wounds. Many have seen their families shattered, mothers and fathers bought and sold, sons and daughters stolen into the night. Many have worked themselves deep into shallow graves to satisfy ill-tempered masters, weighing cotton by the pound with calloused hands and living more beast than man. And many have suffered the greatest injustice this mortal world can offer, the notion that the sum of any person's body and soul may be labeled property. Please forgive me for the unsettling images that I may have conjured, but I do this to make you feel the weight of what we have lost, so you may feel the weight of what we have gained. Freedom! I pray that the word rings in your ears as it has rung out through our nation. But this is now a nation of free people and free people only. No more chains or fetters, no more whips or ropes, and most of all, no more of the wicked and loathsome label that is property. Because we are people. Because we have always been people, although this nation has not always treated us accordingly. And as free people, we have a great responsibility, one that falls upon everyone I see in this crowd. We must rise and stand together, forever steadfast and swift-footed in the pursuit of change. We must never rest until we know that we have secured a better future for those who will come after us. And we must do this as one people. For if we are not one in flesh, then we must be one in spirit. Because we all wish to see it, don't we? A better nation. One that does not tolerate discrimination. One that does not tolerate elimination. One that does not tolerate the violation of its good people. I am not saying it will be easy. In fact, I'm sure we will face more challenges than I can describe. It will be a struggle unlike any other to make the land of the free live up to its golden promises and to love one another, even when this nation's heart is gripped by hate. But I can think of no task more worthwhile, more rewarding, and more glorious than this. After all, as Brother Frederick Douglass has said, if there is no struggle, there is no progress. And we must progress. We must rise up and fight for what we know to be righteous. In closing, I will repeat, it is for freedom that Christ has set us free. Stand firm then, and do not let yourselves again be burdened by a yoke of slavery. Thank you.
Amen. Okay. Live Every Voice and Sing, sometimes referred to as the African American National Anthem, was first performed as a poem for Lincoln's birthday in 1900 at the Stanton School in Jacksonville, Florida. Stanton School principal James Weldon Johnson wrote the words to introduce honored guest Booker T. Washington. The poem was later set to music by Johnson's brother, John. So, I would like everyone to stand so that we can sing the Black National Anthem. Your lyrics are in the insert sheet in your program. Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring. Ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun on a day begun. Let us march on till victory is won.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Voices in Harmony Choir and students from MSMS. Let's give them another big round of applause. The students not only asked me to thank you, but to remind you that remember when you leave this place that we're all in this together, to quote the High School Musical lyric writers. But most importantly, as you leave this place, remember that we have to know each other's story, and we have to support each other's story, and we have to honor each other's story and our ancestors. We're one community. It's our history. It's our story. And there's going to come a day, maybe, when people aren't courageous enough to think about the future of their community and do something positive about it. But today is not that day. Thank you for coming. Y'all have a wonderful day.